Good morning. A question I'm asked an awful lot is, how do you make libraries or create your own library in SketchUp? The obvious desire is to create components and or other models and save them in a library so that at a future date you can just pull them out of the library and reuse them. So today that's what I'm going to show you how to do. I'm going to start by talking a little bit about the components dialog box. That's this guy up here, the components dialog box. That's where it all starts. We all know that if you push or click on the In Model dialog box, you get all of the components that are in your current model. They take a little while to upgrade, or refresh, I should say, but they're all there. And you can pull any one of these into out of the library, the components library in the components dialog box. You can just pull them out and drop them any place you want. That's kind of handy. Suppose you had your own library of parts. Well, you actually do in a way. If you look at what else is in this library, notice that you have this thing called components. If I click on that, up comes two folders called Component Sampler and Dynamic Components Training. These are factory installed libraries that SketchUp maintains. I don't use those much, and so they're of not great interest to me, so I'm going to skip over that. This is kind of interesting. Here's this one called My Models. If you have ever stored things in the warehouse, components or models, you can go to them right here. So if I click on My Models, it'll take a while because I have DSL, very slow. But these are all things I have stored in the warehouse, SketchUp 3D Warehouse. If I want to bring one of these models or components or whatever it is I have stored up there, I've got quite a few of them. All I have to do is click on it right here. And that brings up the 3D Warehouse. And now I can download it into my model. So that's one way of storing libraries. Let's look at some others. I don't have any collections, but it's also the 3D Warehouse. If I were to go to the 3D Warehouse and create a collection, I could gather other people's uploaded 3D Warehouse models and put them in my collection. You know, that way if I find something I might think I might use in the future, I just add it to the collection. And then by clicking on collection, my collection, I can then bring those in the same way I brought in my models. So those are sort of the two online 3D warehouse collections or libraries you can work with. There's one called Nearby. It's grayed out. I have no idea what it does. I'd have to look it up, but I really don't care about it at the moment. There's also this section down here called Recent, which is places I've been, models that I've been in recently. So if I want to go back to them, I can get them. And right at the moment, it's storing 4 recents. Notice My Models was the most recent that I did. That's this one right here. Prior to that, I did My Collection, so that's stored here. And prior to that, I looked at Components. That's stored here. Now here's the interesting ones. These are actually my libraries. These are libraries I created, and I'm going to show you how to do that today, and added them to the favorites right here. Now when SketchUp is first loaded, there's a bunch of things under favorites that's loaded by the factory, by the installation program, that you may want to get rid of or keep, but you can get rid of them like I'm going to do here. So I can start over and show you how to populate this. If I say remove from favorites, now I go look at my favorites and notice that was gone. I click on cabinets. I can say remove from favorites. And now cabinets is gone. Furniture, remove from favorites. And now that's gone. I have some called pulls. I'll remove that. I'm probably going to wish I hadn't done this. And the last one is trim. I'm going to remove that from favorites. So now I've got an empty favorites. And what I want to do is populate favorites with my set of libraries. How do I do that? Well, let's start and see where files are stored to begin with. Let's go to Windows, Preferences, and Files. Here you'll see a number of file locations, and when you first install Windows, it actually sets them up in a place called User. I don't know how I'm going to keep this alive while I do this, but User, my username, App Data, Roaming, SketchUp, SketchUp 2020, SketchUp Templates, in this case Templates. On the Mac, they'll be in a different place. You can't change this one. This is grayed out. You can't change it. But all of the rest of these you can change. And so what you can do is you can navigate to where you want them, select the folder, and now you'll have it changed it to whatever it is you want. And there's a number of names here. Each of these is going to be a separate folder. Models, components, materials, styles, texture images, watermark images, export, classifications. Most of these I'll never use. But where do I want to put them? Well, let me bring up my File Explorer. On the Mac, you would bring up the Finder. And if I look in my Dropbox, those of you who are familiar with Dropbox and may have one, it's a place that it's an application you can add to your computer so that anything you put there will be stored online in the cloud under the Dropbox cloud. And then any device or computer you have can access it. Well, that's where I like to store all my SketchUp files, because then I can access those from any device. My laptop, my desktop, another one of my desktops. So under Dropbox, I've got something called SketchUp Files, where I keep everything related to SketchUp. Under there, I have something called CABWriter. And that, by the way, I gotta close this for a second. If you have a CABWriter application installed on the Project tab, down here you need a directory location for storing defaults. Well, that directory location is Dropbox, SketchUp Files, CABWriter. Dropbox, SketchUp Files, CABWriter. So that's where I put all of my CABWriter defaults. Notice there's a bunch of defaults here, and these are the comprehensive CABWriter Comprehensive 3 defaults. I also have one called Cutlass Bridge. If you bring up the extended entity info and look under the list tab, you have to set up a place here for all of your backup files. And again, that's Dropbox, SketchUp Files, Cutlass Bridge. Now, what are the rest of these? Well, the rest of these if I go back to my preferences, the rest of these are these guys: classifications, classifications, components, components, export, export, materials, materials, so on and so forth. So for every one of these, I have a folder over here. Once I've done that, I set these up to point to these folders. In other words, if I go to Models, Models points to Dropbox, SketchUp File, Models. And I've done that for all of these except this bottom one. So now, whenever I save something in SketchUp, I'll want to make sure they go in these folders so I can always access them really easily. So having done that, set up all these folders, now I can do things like this. In the Components folder, I can put appliance, I can subdivide it into things like appliances, cabinets, furniture, pulls, and trim. And in each one of those, I can put simple SketchUp models. So for instance, if I look at this one, if I open that, let me just bring that. It's nothing but a simple SketchUp model. of trim. And this one's called strim. Notice up here, the file name is C31YS molding.skep. It's just a file I created of a piece of trim. Let me close this. And I have some other types of molding in here, for instance, cove molding. That's simple cove molding. And so you wonder, why do I have more than one piece in here? In fact, these are 3 components. That's 1 component, that's 2 components, and that's 3 components. Now, I'll show you why in a moment. This actually shouldn't be there. Okay, so a library is nothing but a folder called components, subdivided into other things, and then appliances stuck in there, or cabinets, or furniture. All in the components folder. So now that I've got those set up, I'm ready to add them to my library in SketchUp. How do I do that? Well, right here, and unfortunately this goes off screen and I can't pull it on screen. But I'll tell you what it says. This says, open or create a local collection. Open or create a local collection. And if I click that, I get this dialog box, which is nothing but a Finder box on the Mac, or it's just a folder box on the PC. So I simply navigate the Dropbox, SketchUp files, components, and I'll choose trim and select it. Now, if I look here, my recents has trim. It's not in my favorites yet. It's in my recents. But if I right click on this, if I click on this icon again, the details, and say add to favorites, and now look at favorites, trim is in my favorites and will remain there until I remove it. So let me do that again. I'm going to click on this dialog box right here, details. I'm going to say open or create a local collection. And I'm going to go this time to pulls. Select that folder. I'm going to go back to this icon. And I'm going to say add to favorites. Now if I look at favorites, I've got trim and pulls. And off screen, I'll add the other ones back in here. So now, what can I do with this? Well, suppose I want to bring some trim in to my model for some reason. This model right here is not going to be a model that I'm likely to use trim. But let me just bring it in and I'll pretend to put trim around the top of the wall here. So I'll go to my trim library. I'll bring in this S trim. I'm going to zoom in on it. Notice that this is a component, one in model. But when I looked at the S trim in its actual SketchUp model, this was 3 individual components. Well, here's what happens. Anytime you bring something in from your library like that, like this, it brings it in as one component. Not too fair. All we need to do, and I'm going to delete this one. All we need to do is right click on it and explode it. And now I have my 3 pieces of trim. 1, 2, 3. So just remember that when you create your own library and then you bring something in, it's going to bring it in as a component. And by the way, let me back that up. The component name, if I look at the component name, it says C31Y S-molding. That's actually the file name of this component. So it brings it in as one component, and the component name, that one component name, is the file name of that library. All right, again, so I'm going to explode this. Now that I have that, I can add this now. I can add it to my model. What happened here? I seem to have lost it. Oh, there it is. So now I can add it to my model. And for some reason, let me add some trim to the outside of this. I'm not sure why you'd want to do something like this, but that's okay. Now, that little piece doesn't do me much good if I want the trim to go to the length of this wall. But not to worry, I can always edit this component. And now, using the select tool in a left to right fashion, anytime you use the select tool in the left to right fashion, it will only select those things that are completely within the bounding box. So the only thing that was completely within the bounding box was the end face and its perimeter. So now I can use the move tool pick it up at that point, and move to that point. Now, if I want to wrap this around the corner, I need the miter here, not down here. My miter right at the moment. Oops. Where's my miter? Oh, my miter is here. My miter is here, not a problem. So I've got the miter in the right place. Now I can go back and pick up other pieces of this trim. And this one's going to be a little more difficult because no, it's not. It's going to be fine. I just got to pick it up at the right place. Here we go. And now I could use the same technique to move this in that I used before. And then I can put the next piece of trim here. But let's try a more realistic example. One of the questions I was recently asked in one of our webinars is, suppose my modeling, my construction technique is fully fully frameless. And the frameless people call this overlay, full overlay, where the doors and drawers overlay the sides of the cabinet and the stretchers, only leaving a clearance. But they said, we often like to have a 1.5 inch end panel here that looks like this. Well, Carburetor doesn't draw that, but you can create it easily. And so here's what I'm going to do. I drew this cabinet over here. This is a cabinet Carburetor does create. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a couple of things. I'm going to come out here 3 inches, 0,3. And I want that to be 3/4. So I'll move that line in. I'll get rid of this construction line. And now I'm going to extrude this, or push-pull it, down to the base of the cabinet, right there. I hope I got that right. Looks like I did. I'm going to create a component here. And I'll just call it filler. Whoops. Oh, let me do it this way. Let me use make Carburetor component. And I'm going to attach it to cabinet 1 for the moment. Custom part. I'm going to call it filler. And I'll give it a name of filler, or instance name of filler also. Now it tells me that the attributes are not assigned. So if I want to assign the attributes, I should. And I will. And I'm going to resize this and resize the length by, I don't know, 3/4 of an inch. And because it's a custom part, I'm going to CABWriter protect it. All right, so now what I'm going to do is select this. Do a move copy and bring it over here. And now I'm going to come over here, select all these pieces, unlock them, I'm going to do a move copy. And put them here. I think I put them in the wrong place. I did. That's better. All right, so that's the look I want. Now what I can do, I should have left that selected, but now what I can do, I'm going to rename these. Filler, that's fine. I'm going to change this name to 1000. With the assumption that I'll never have 1,000 cabinets in my model. I'm going to change that piece to 1,000. I'll change this piece to 1,000. Likewise, this piece. And now that I've changed all these to 1,000, I actually could change this to 1,000. Which also changes this one. Okay, now I'm ready to select the ball. I'll do an edit copy. And I'll open up a new SketchUp model. Well, actually not, just a blank SketchUp file. And I'll do an edit, paste. I'm going to paste it right here at the origin. Oh, there we go. Okay, and I'll get rid of the axes. And I'm going to save this. And I'm going to go to my Dropbox, SketchUp files, components, and I'm going to put it in I could even create a new folder. I'll call it End Panels. So I'll save it in End Panels. And I'll call it Basic End Panel. So now, if I delete this, and I go to my library, I'm sorry, let me add it to my library first of all. So now I'll go to End Panels, and there we have it. Now I can simply bring it in as a model. Notice it's one big component, which is great at the moment because I can simply pick it up right there and put it there, explode it, and now I've got to renumber it. To C1L instead of C1000L, but you can do that in the normal way. Okay, so that's kind of how you create custom parts, put them in the library. And the good news is while that took me a little while to create that, actually it would have taken me much less time if I weren't if I weren't doing it on the video. Once you've done it, it takes you no time. Now it's just a matter of bringing it in, putting it in place. Now in this case, it's gonna be a little different because I'm gonna have to get rid of some components. Exploding it. In this case, I can get rid of that part and get rid of that part. Don't need it. And there we go. Oh, and I guess I didn't have this. Well, I didn't put it in the right place. I'm sticking above here, but no big deal. You can move that down. So that's how you create a library and how you use the parts that are in the library to do things you need to do. All right, so until the next video, have a good day.